got Sally Stoneman with us here today. She's one of our finalists for the 2020 Art Award, and she's here to talk to us today about this amazing piece of sculpture. Over to you.
It's really a part of a body of works. So this one in particular, Softly Harshly #2, is a part of a recent series where I've just done three pieces. And as you can see, I'm using recycled fencing wire and emu feathers, but the recycled fencing wire is kind of layered in history in itself because it's from the vermin-proof fence. So it's collected from, this is actually like the dingo-proof fence, and I've used the rabbit-proof fence previously, and it's collected from the wheat belt of Western Australia. The concept for me with these pieces is that they're a literal and metaphorical symbol of colonisation through the referencing of the wire to the division of the land and the continent through settlement, and then the referencing of the feathers is sort of more of a connection to nature and a connection to, in this particular piece, to the story of the vermin-proof fence when it was erected, and in the 1930s there was a plague of emus that were captured on the fence on the West Australian border because there was a drought happening. And of course, once they put up the vermin-proof fences, there was, the native animals were caught on them as well. And the government at this stage called in the army in the 30s, and they went out to the fence and they tried to shoot all of the emus. There were 20,000 emus there then. And then they found that they couldn't do that because emus all spread and dissipated and went off in groups and things. So then they decided to put a bounty on the emus, and so by 1934 they had actually killed 34,000 emus. Actually, I think it was much more than that. It was more like 57,000. So it was, these fences, whilst they've been fabulous at keeping the rabbits out or the dingoes out, they also create a problem for the native animals. And so this particular work is referencing that. And this earlier work up here, I don't know if anyone has seen this work, but that's my first piece of Softly Harshly. And this one is in Wadjamup, at Wadjamup Museum in Rottnest. That ephemeral juxtaposition with the harshness of the wire, and that's where you get the title, Softly Harshly. I have a third piece which I'd love to show you, and it's going to be exhibited at Lost Eden Gallery, which is up in Dwellingup, in a couple of weeks. And they've got an exhibition titled In Our Nature, and there's a number of artists in that show. And this work, as you can see, it's still working with something that's ephemeral, in that the grass is the long-haired plume grass, and it's Australia-wide, and grows underneath eucalypts, and it grows across the continent. So I've collected that, and it's just placed into the wire to have that sort of connection with the fragility of nature and the ephemeralness of it. So trying to juxtapose it with a man-made element as well as a natural element. And I guess the main reason behind my work is that I'm always considering climate change and the need for us to change as humans in the way that we manage the landscape. So that's a major consideration. I was going to talk a bit about the fences, if you're interested, because we actually in Western Australia have 3 fences, and we have the longest fence in the world that runs from sort of near Esperance all the way up to Port Hedland, 1,833 kilometres. And then, of course, we had a number 2 rabbit-proof fence, and that was 1,165 kilometres. And then we had a number 3, which I think was 285 kilometres in wire. And I created some work that was called boulders, and I can show you an image of that. It was trying to evoke, the natural form of boulders in the landscape. And so they're solid. So they're actually completely solid. Quite large.
Solid with wire?
Yeah, solid with wire. So quite heavy. Well, the process that I use is to collect the wire, roll the wire out, and then take out any barbed wire and any strand wire, and then cut it into smaller lengths, like maybe 1 metre or 2, usually 2 metres, and then stretch the wire. So stretch it, and then for these ones I would have started with small pieces of wire and made small balls, and then just layered it. So it was a really, not quite, because it's a bit stickier, it's a bit tougher than that, but just a layering of the wire and twitching it together. So I used a lot of pliers and things like that. And I think that the colour, the kind of burnt colour of the wire, also helps make it look like it belongs in the landscape, that if they sort of look like rocks or something. So this was my first entry to Sculpture by the Sea, this piece in Cottesloe. And so then this was the evolution of the hollow sculptures. So this one's called Echo of the Landscape. And so a different process of just stretching the wire out, but forming it, twitching it together so it's hollow, and then coming in this way. And then you can see with this one, I'm just sort of overlapping and overlapping. It's about 4 or 5 thicknesses of wire over the work. And so I evolved from there into doing the hollow ones, because I thought that it was interesting to be able to see through them and to be able to think about the landscape as being temporary, and that we're in a constant change. More of a flora form. I titled it Tumbleweeds, and tumbleweeds are, the plants that are blown across kind of deserts or arid areas across Australia. And so they were hollow forms, but then I embellished them with crochet copper wire. So and that's sewn onto it. So you can see on that one the crocheted leaves. And then this one is the twisted aluminium wire. It's titled Seed, and this work was shown at Sculpture by the Sea in 2018, and I won the WA Sculpture Scholarship with this work. The concept behind this one, obviously the title kind of encapsulates my idea of planting a seed, but the concept of looking within and growth and personal growth is also contained within the idea of this sculpture. And it was quite tricky to make this one, because the 3 forms aren't made separately. They're made, and it's not made separately and put together. I had to make the first one and then start to make the second one around it, and then start to make the third one around it. Similar process that I went through, but perhaps for this one I was more interested in the elemental force of nature, of course being the symbol of the fire. And I think at that time we had fires sweeping the continent and all that sort of thing. So
was that one just a year ago at Cottesloe?
Yeah, it wasn't long ago. The travel through northeast Arnhem Land inspired my latest the last work that I think I showed at Sculpture by the Sea, it was based on, inspired by the cathedral anthills that are sort of populated all through Arnhem Land. And so I really liked that natural form, and of course the incredible ingenuity of the little ants to make these incredible forms. But then once I sort of was making it, I also felt like it was really figurative, and I was loving the fact that it kind of moved into becoming something else in your imagination, or my imagination anyway. So, and that sense of looking through and feeling like something was in the landscape, but it was disappearing. So I think that's a real theme for me in my work, the fragility of our environment and the need to protect it and look after it and work with it. So yeah, that's